This conference will now be recorded.
First of all, thanks for joining. I hope two of the candidates who have shown interest have joined. I think it says Sri and Ashwini have joined. So let's get started right away. So about myself, in short, my name is Rahmat. I have about 5 years of experience with networking and security platform. So I will be covering you basics on Palo Alto, and we'll first go ahead and look at the agenda. But before that, if you would like to, you can share about your experience and what made you show interest in Palo Alto in short, within a line or two. Anyone can start. I think we have only 2 people available here. Am I audible? Hello.
Sir?
Am I clear in my voice, or am I not? Just
Yes.
so that I can.
You're clear, sir. You're audible.
All right. So we'll start with the agenda then. We'll be covering basics of Palo Alto. As you see here in the agenda, it will cover introduction of what is Palo Alto and how it's been introduced, when was it introduced, and when was it ventured, and how it progressed, and where it is in net firewall market at the moment. And then we'll go through on how Palo Alto is different from other vendor firewalls, what makes it a leader in the market. Then we'll go ahead and check its features, and I'll be walking you through on each of the features that we come across with regards to Palo Alto, which makes it the leader in the market again. And then we'll go ahead and check what and how Palo Alto processes the packet when the packet first reaches the Palo Alto till it gets out of the device, how the packet is processed. And then we'll look at a very simple configuration on how to start up with Palo Alto, how to take a control of it, and how to configure a simple security policy for users to access internet, which who pass through a Palo Alto firewall. And then there is a thing called Panorama with Palo Alto, and I'll be talking about what it does and why is it so useful when it comes to handling multiple locations and data center firewalls together in an environment. So first, talking about Palo Alto's introduction and when it is being introduced into the market. Initially, it was founded in the year 2005, and it first came to the market in the year 2007. So the device first launched and was purchased in the year 2007, wherein it was founded in the year 2005. So we'll look at why it is so popular and why it is the leader in the market and who are its competitors and how Palo Alto is different from its competitors and its challengers. So first of all, Palo Alto in general is a security device. It is said to be a next generation firewall. We'll also talk about what is a legacy firewall, what is an actual firewall about, and what is a next generation firewall does, what it does to the users and the environment. So how both are different and how next generation firewall is having its edge towards the other legacy firewalls. So Palo Alto firewall in general, it beats most of the vendors that is said to be next generation firewall, and it have its own rivals and challenges. We'll be covering them in the next upcoming slides, wherein in this the firewall itself will address most of the security needs that an organization needs. Like you say, in legacy firewalls, the restriction or the restriction for the users to access something or not to access something is dependent upon just the port numbers, IP addresses, and protocols. Wherein the firewall, which is said to be next generation firewall, Palo Alto or any other next generation firewall in general, it will have multiple parameters that will be discussed, and multiple parameters that will be taken into account for a user to access something or for him to not access something. In support wise, I would say I worked with Checkpoint, I worked with Palo Alto as well. So in terms of support, in terms of the customer support, Palo Alto has its edge over other vendor firewalls. It has a great customer support that gives to the users and the customers. So, and it just gives a general overview of how many employees work and stuff like that. So we can ignore. So as I said, comparing Palo Alto with a normal firewall and how Palo Alto is different from the normal firewall, and how it has an edge towards the next generation firewall. So looking at that one, just give me a second. We'll take ASA for an example. So if you take ASA, it probably will be accessing the traffic or passing the traffic based upon 4 to 5 parameters. So let me list it down. It will check the IP address, source or destination, and it will be probably checking the destination port number, and it will probably be looking at what protocol the traffic is coming from, either UDP or TCP. So only with these parameters we'll be able to control the traffic which is coming from one end to the other. So let's say user let's consider a user trying to access internet through the firewall. Let's consider this firewall to be an ASA. An administrator usually will be able to control the traffic based on only these parameters. Whereas Palo Alto, on the other hand, it can have various parameters to actually assess the traffic and decide upon whether to allow the traffic or not. So let's say it can track the traffic based on user ID. It can actually access the application itself rather than the port number. We'll come back to this later on what a port number does and what an application does and what are its advantages. And it can probably assess the traffic based on, again, port number is also a parameter here, but on top of port number, it will first assess the application and it will assess the username. And it can do decryption. So if there is if there's a traffic which is of SSL encrypted, it can make sure the traffic is decrypted, and we can have a decryption rule in place, and it can decrypt the traffic and then assess the traffic what is inside it. Whereas ASA, on the other hand, will not be able to do that. So likewise, there are various parameters that is involved, and we can keep saying. I'll come to this later when we discuss on what are the features that Palo Alto possesses. So coming down, as I said, these are the features that we will come across when we talk about Palo Alto. So I'll go through them one by one. So when we talk about Palo Alto's architecture, how it has been designed, let me use internet for that. 1 second. So Palo Alto basically is said to have a single pass parallel processing architecture. So if you see in a normal, in any L3 network device, we'll have something called control plane and we'll have something called data plane. So just give me a second. So this is a schematic representation of how an SP3 architecture works. So if you see, any L3 network device will have a control plane and will have a data plane in place. So control plane basically will take care of the processes, like if you consider a routing protocol. For a routing protocol to work between two devices, it needs to form a neighbor relationship with two devices, right? So all the internal processing, like sending hellos and sending hello messages to the neighbor devices, and those control related stuffs will be taken care by control plane, and all those data processing, so actual data that is sent by the user, will be taken care from the data plane's perspective. So what Palo Alto does in this case is it will process, it will have a separate RAM allocated and CPU allocated for control plane separately, and it will have a separate CPU and RAM allocated for data plane separately. So in this case, what advantage we get out of this is there won't be any overhead on a single. That's because control plane is overloaded. Data plane will not get affected in this case. So let's say there is huge traffic that is taking place in the network, and Palo Alto's data plane is overloaded, and it is using up all the RAM. That won't be possible in this case, because a part of RAM will be allocated. This can be customized. A part of RAM will be allocated to the control plane, and part will be allocated to data plane. So if there is an overhead, it will only be to a specific control. This will only be specific to control plane or the data plane. It won't be harming both of them, since because one is getting overloaded. And coming to data plane trafficking, it will process all the network related stuff, security and content filtering. Everything will be processed in single parallel manner. So that is why we call it as a parallel processing. So it will be processed at once parallelly. So if you think of networking, it talks about layer 2 processing, layer 3 and layer 4 processing. So all the TCP, UDP processing, all the routing, protocol processing, everything will come under networking. Under security, will take care of application ID inspecting, threat prevention mechanism. All those security related stuff will come under security processing, and content inspection is again related to antivirus, anti-spyware, anti-malware and everything. So all those content filtering mechanisms will be performed here. So all these three data plane mechanisms will be performed all at once in a parallel manner, so that it won't use up resources that much, which is the main issue with other leading vendors in the market like Checkpoint. In this case, it processes everything at once in a parallel manner. In that way, everything will be processed and outputted out in a single parallel manner, so that it saves time as well as the resource. So this is what we understand about single pass parallel processing SP3 architecture with Palo Alto. And then coming around to application ID. As I stated earlier, Palo Alto has its unique way of identifying application based on patterns in a unique way. So I have a Palo Alto that is already running in my VM. So let me show you how it actually identifies the application. So these are all not configured by an administrator in the firewall. It will basically be inbuilt in the Palo Alto firewall, wherein we can just go and pick it up from the firewall to make it available for the users in the security policy. So whether we want to allow a specific application or we want to deny a specific application, we just can go ahead and search for that application and use it in the security policy. That's it. So this is the applications tab that this is actually the graphical user interface of Palo Alto, if you see here. So I'll come to how I'll walk you through each and every tab of it when we go through the lab. For now, if we look at the application, it has something called category here. So which defines what category the application belongs to, and what subcategory it belongs to, and which technologies comes onto, and then what is the risk factor about it. So if it is any suspicious website, a Bitcoin website, comes under a different risk pattern. If it is a file transfer website, file transfer application, it comes under a different risk pattern. So it is all pre-categorized, and it will, if you just go and select an application, let's say for instance, we go and select Facebook here. Just me 1 second for it to load again. Yeah. So I have just typed in Facebook here. So it filters me out Facebook application and all the sub applications under Facebook. So if you want to do something with Facebook apps, Facebook based Facebook chat. So specifically, if you want to block Facebook chat alone, you can just make use of this in the security policy. And for everything, it has a category and subcategory and the risk pattern that has already been pre-categorized for us here. And what standard ports it uses, and what is its risk factor? It is risk factor number 3. And what is its subcategory? It is instant messaging, and category is collaboration. So this is what Palo Alto does for us, predefined. There is something called custom application, which if we have our own internal application in our environment and it uses a specific port, and we want to allow or deny that application for outside users or for our users in the organization, we can create a custom application on behalf of the company on the Palo Alto firewall and make it for use in the security policies. So I'll also walk you through what is the difference between application ID, an application and the port number. So let's take for an example, user here tries to access something on port number 2021, which is for FTP. So user here wants to access the server, which is running on port number 2021 for FTP. So let's say the user, in this case, it's safe because if we are allowing port number 21 here, in this example, the user is okay in accessing the server because the server is listening to port number 21 for FTP service. So FTP is an application that listens to a port number 21 by default, but there are some cases where the server runs FTP application, but it will be listening on some other port, let's say 2121 here. So in this case, allowing port 21, imagining that he is accessing FTP, will not work here because the server is actually listening to some other port number. So this is where application really comes in handy. Application inspection really comes in handy. In case of ASA firewall, we will not be able to do that because only port number will be the parameter that will be taken into account in terms of ASA. So in this case, if Palo Alto is giving us an option to add an application here, say FTP, and whatever port this server uses, the only criteria we got to fulfill is the server should listen to FTP application, and it can listen to any port it wants to. So user will be accessing FTP application, and it doesn't matter which port the destination server listens to. If the application matches, the traffic will be allowed. So that's what we take as an advantage of using an application over the port number. So that's about application ID. User ID, again, let's imagine user will get an IP from DHCP usually when he connects to a network, connects to a corporate network. To make sure, to take an example of monitoring what a user does in the network, only having the IP address of the user won't work. It will be very difficult to figure out which user does what and which user is doing what and accessing what in the network. So having something called user ID inspection will be very handy, wherein based upon the user's domain and what IP he gets, from which network he comes from, his username will be identified, and Palo Alto Firewall will make it visible for us in the logs on which user is accessing and what IP he is having and what is he actually trying to access. So that can be achieved in various ways through using user ID. So this we will be covering in depth when we happen to start the actual session with Palo Alto PCNSE or NSE. Again with Wildfire. So this is again a unique feature that Palo Alto possesses, which is very interesting to actually know about. So imagining a user trying to access a file or download a file from internet. So let's say user is trying to download a file and Palo Alto in between is watching all this, and it actually allows the user to go through and access that file. So from that one user's perspective, the file is actually compromised, the user is actually compromised, and the file has been allowed for him to access. But the Palo Alto as well takes a copy of that file and it will send it to Wildfire for analysis. So Wildfire is a cloud platform that Palo Alto possesses, which actually is used to assess the vulnerable files and vulnerable links that the users are accessing, and appoint a threat ID to it, and then it can issue it to all the firewalls which is possessing Wildfire licenses for their firewalls. So let me open this in Paint so that I can. So with regards to Wildfire, what I was trying to say is, let's say we have a user trying to access download some file out to internet, and let's imagine he's connected to this firewall. So this firewall, it will initially allow and make sure the user is accessing the file, but it takes a copy of that file and it will be sending down to the Wildfire for analysis. So what Wildfire does is it will have a sandbox. Sandbox is actually a virtual machine. A virtual machine will be sitting sitting or connected next to Wildfire, which will be reachable from Wildfire. And that virtual machine will be doing the same thing what the user does, and it will be retrieving the file, downloading the file, and it will check if any virus is getting infected on that sandbox. So if in case it is indeed a virus or any malware that has been injected onto that file by any attacker in the internet, what this sandbox would do is it will intimate this Wildfire. So this sandbox will intimate this Wildfire, and this Wildfire will mark this as a threat enabled file, and it will send it to the Palo Alto update server, which is again located and connected to the Palo Alto Wildfire analysis server. And this Palo Alto update server will be sending this threat ID of that file which has been found malicious to all the firewalls which is having Wildfire license installed to it. So in this way, even though one PC here is compromised, all other PCs or all other network which would have been compromised if this would have not been there will be saved for the future. If the same attack or the same file was has been tried to download, any user tries to download the same file in future, he will not be able to download it unless the Wildfire is set to allow it. So there is an option in the firewall where we can allow that file by throwing an alert to the user, or we can deny that file itself. This way, the attack of downloading that file from any other user in future will be avoided. So this applies to any email links and also to any file that the user tries to download. And again, malware analysis, we have a security profile that we define in the Palo Alto firewall, and we set up few rules which will allow firewall to inspect the traffic which might have been affected by malware, to make sure it is not. And if it is, it will be dropped right there on the firewall. It will not be reaching the user at all. And next thing we would be interesting to know about is the high availability on the firewall. High availability, there are two types of HAs that are available on the firewall. We can think of active and active standby. So active, what it does is it will, just give me a second. So high availability, if you think of it, it has two methods, which is active and active standby. Active, we will have two firewalls, which is actively passing traffic, and both will be passing traffic together based upon what method of active high availability we have configured. So in terms of active standby, we'll again have two firewalls. One will act as standby, and all the connections and all the concurrent connections will be passing through only on one firewall, whereas other firewall will be standby. If the active firewall goes down, the standby will take over. So the good thing about active or active standby is the transition takes only few seconds, and users will not even know that firewall is failing over. They'll just have a few seconds of drop and nothing more than that. So we'll be looking into HA more in detail with the hands-on lab on how to perform the high availability in detail if we happen to connect back again. Threat prevention, again, as I said, there's a tab here which, if you see, one is for antivirus and anti-spyware, vulnerability, URL filtering, file blocking. So file blocking is something which is used to block a specific extension of file. If you don't want a specific file to be downloaded or to be uploaded onto internet or anywhere else, you can just add a rule saying these file types are blocked, or these are not allowed to enter network or can't be downloaded. The same with URL filtering. So if you want few categories which are to be blocked or which are to be warned for the users, we can just add a rule here to make sure those URL categories or actual URLs are allowed or blocked depending upon a requirement. So another feature of Palo Alto is it is not only available as a hardware, it can be deployed as a VM based product as a virtual machine inside a ESXi host. So if I have to show you what are the models or what are the deployments that Palo Alto possesses, we can just check on the Palo Alto website here. So good thing about this VM series firewalls are it can be deployed within a few minutes of time. It doesn't take much longer like ordering a firewall from the vendor and it has to be shipped here, and we got to take care of all the payment related stuffs offline. So here everything goes online, and it will be very easy for us to deploy a firewall real quick. So this gives a specific details about Palo Alto 3200 data sheet. So similarly, if you would like to go for a different firewalls which you want to go through on how its performance will be calculated and everything, you can just check the Palo Alto firewall data sheet here. It goes with all the Palo Alto models. So basically 3000 series, 5000 series firewalls will be used in data center environments, which has very high performance, and so that the bottleneck won't happen on the network. Wherein Palo Alto 800 or Palo Alto 220, PA 500 would be used in normal enterprise infrastructure or small offices. So that's about the features in short, and we can go ahead with the packet flow here. So so here regarding packet flow, it will tell us how the packet is actually entering the firewall on the inside interface, whichever interface it might be, and what it does within it and how it exits out of the interface. So in between that, whatever happens in the firewall will be discussed in this section here. So give me a second to open a good image of it. Let's close out all this. All right. So for any traffic to pass through a device, we'll have an interface that it should enter inside, and we'll have an interface to exit inside. So in between that, this is what happens within a Palo Alto firewall. So if you consider, once the packet enters the Palo Alto, like all the layer 3 devices does, it will have Palo Alto will be extracting the layer 2, layer 3, and layer 4 information, like in what is the MAC address of the device that is sending the traffic, and what is the IP address of it, and what zone it belongs to. So if you I think of Palo Alto, it is a zone-based firewall wherein each interface that Palo Alto possesses are actively connected in the network. They should be assigned to a zone for it to work. So each firewall should be assigned to a zone so that it is identified to be a part of corporate network inside, or it belongs to an untrust network outside, or it belongs to a DMZ zone where all the servers are hosted. So layer 2, layer 3, and layer 4 information are extracted. IP address, what type of traffic it is, TCP or UDP in terms of layer 4, and what is the source MAC address. And it will also make sure the layer 2, layer 3, and layer 4 headers are perfectly received. If there are any errors with respect to these three layer information, the packet will be right away discarded. So if you take an example of layer 2, first thing, once the packet is received in layer 2, it will do fragmentation. So imagine there is an error in fragmentation, or if there is an interface error that is encountered, the packet will be discarded right away and it won't be processing the packet further. And coming down to, as I said, ingress process error, imagining there is no error encountered on layer 2, layer 3, and layer 4, the packet will be processed below, and it will be checked if the inspection is actually supposed to be done in the for this traffic or not. So how it will decide is based on the type of traffic. So it will first see if it is a layer 2 traffic, the traffic is only for layer 2, or if it is in layer 3 traffic. If it is in layer 3 traffic, it will see if it is an IPv4 or v6. So based upon different parameters on whether if it's IPv4 or v6, like if it is a unicast or multicast or broadcast, it will decide whether the inspection is applicable for or not for the traffic. So take for an example, the traffic is a layer 3 and it is an IPv4 and it is unicast. In that case, firewall inspection will be applicable for the traffic. So there is a way that we can figure out this one. So if we happen to go to the same website I have taken this image from, we'll find a table. This is actually one good thing about, again, the Palo Alto is that the documentation, you don't have to go and search anywhere for the documentation. Palo Alto itself has a very nice and neat documentation within their website. So that's where you will find this as well. So here you go. So if you see this one, if you think of IPv4, there can be unicast, multicast, or broadcast traffic. So if it is IPv4 unicast, and if it is layer 3, the inspection is applicable and the packet can be forwarded. And if it is IPv4 unicast, layer 2, inspection and forward is applicable. So virtual wire and TAP is again an interface type in Palo Alto, which we will be discussing later. I didn't include in the agenda for this session, so we'll just skip it for now. We will be definitely looking at it later in this section of Palo Alto thing. So for now, considering layer 3 and IPv4, if it is an IPv4 layer 3 traffic and it is unicast, inspection is applicable. So this is how it categorizes whether the inspection has to be done on the firewall or it shouldn't be. So considering inspection is necessary, and let's say considering it is a IPv4 unicast layer 3 traffic, it has to be inspected, and it comes down to check if it is an IPsec traffic. So if it is a VPN specific traffic, let's say IPsec or SSL VPN. So if you think of VPN, there will be a IP header, that is a tunnel header, and there will be a layer 3 header inside the tunnel layer 3 header. So the Palo Alto will initially make sure the tunnel IP header is decrypted, and the IP header which is inside the tunnel header is inspected again. So the same process happens with the header that is inside the tunnel header. The same things are checked like layer 2, layer 3, layer 4, and if there are any errors in the checksum, or if there is any fragmentation errors also, will be again verified, and again ingress process error is verified, as I said, and again will be checked upon whether it is firewall inspection applicable traffic or not. And then comes down, the firewall chooses whether it has to process this traffic in fast path or slow path, depending on whether the session is already available in the firewall. So if you consider if the traffic that is reaching the firewall, for instance, is already known to the firewall, it has already the firewall has already seen the traffic, then it will not go to the slow path. Slow path is actually to determine what is the outside interface the traffic should go to, that is checking the routing table, and it will check whether any NAT is applicable for the specific traffic, and whether the security policy, any security policy available is matching this traffic to allow the traffic. So it is just to check this 3 parameters, and it doesn't do anything with the traffic like processing it or performing NAT or anything like that. So if the session is already available, firewall already knows all this information, so it doesn't have to go to slow path to determine all these 3 parameters again. So it will be again waste of resource. So it will not do that if session is already applicable, already available in the firewall. Imagining session is not already available after doing a session lookup, it has to form a session, and then it has to process a packet. So for forming a session, the firewall will go to slow path. So under slow path, it will come down to doing a forwarding lookup, where it will figure out what is the outside interface by checking the routing. So basically, if you give a show IP route on a router, it will give you for which network what is the outside interface or the next hop IP address. So the similar thing is done here. It will do an forwarding lookup, the routing lookup, to check what is the zone and what is the interface the exit traffic has to go to, and then the NAT policy. So it will check if the NAT policy is applicable for this traffic or not. If it is applicable, and it will check if it is a destination NAT traffic or not. If it is a destination NAT, it will do a lookup again to make sure the egress interface is correctly looked up and it is correctly sent outside. So I will come to this while I cover NAT policy lookup and security policy lookup, how it has to be configured and what are the rules behind it. For now, doing a NAT policy lookup, it specifically looks if it is a destination NAT. The NAT is for the destination IP address, and it will see if it is for the destination IP address, it will do the forwarding lookup again to make sure the egress interface is correctly identified and the zone is correctly identified. And then it will do a firewall policy lookup. So here I would like to show you something. So this is the policy tab that we actually have here. So I already created a policy where I have allowed this subnet to go to this subnet to anywhere in outside zone, and it will show you the hit count and everything, and application port number, whatever I talked about, and it is allowed. So if you look at this, so this firewall security lookup is done here. It will only look at 5 parameters that I have configured here. I have configured so many here. It will only look at 5 parameters, that is source zone, source IP, destination zone and destination IP, and the port number, the service port number. It won't look at the application. So it will assume the application as any, and it will see if for these parameters, what is the security policy saying? It is saying allowed or denied. Based upon that, it will create a session. Why it will not look at the application is because it has not figured out what application the traffic belongs to at this moment. The application identification comes here. So for now, it will choose application as any, and then it will only check these 5 parameters what I have mentioned. So after all this, if the rule says the traffic should be allowed, it will create a session, and will come down here to the step, and it will now see if the state of the traffic is fine, and if there is a NAT, it will do NAT over here in the step. So what is the state of a traffic? So if you are aware of TCP, there should be 3 things that comes to your mind if you think of TCP. So TCP is a connection-oriented protocol, as you all know. So it basically does 3 things to make form a connection between a source and a destination. So first is source sends a synchronization message to the sender, the receiver, and receiver sends an acknowledgement for the synchronization packet sent by the sender, and again source will send a SYN ACK to the receiver again. So these 3 are the actual process that happens in a TCP connection. So in this, how this affects a Palo Alto firewall? So when a Palo Alto checks if the session is in an active state or not, so let's say this is a new connection. When it is a new connection, the source should be sending a SYN packet to the receiver. The firewall should only see a SYN packet. If it sees something else other than SYN packet, the session is not in match, because for a new traffic to start for a TCP connection, it should start with synchronization packet. If it starts with something else, someone is going to do something on your network. So in that way, it will see the state of the packet is proper. If it is not, the firewall will be discarding the packet right away. So state of the packet not only means initial traffic should start with SYN. So let's say SYN has been sent from source to destination, and destination to source, it will see an ACK. If it sees something else, if it sees again a SYN packet, same traffic, it will again be same session ID. It will again be considered to be malicious traffic, and it will be dropped. So in either way, the session of the traffic should match for the existing TCP connection, so that the traffic will be passed down, or else it will be dropped. And as I said, the NAT also will be performed here, and lookup that has been done here will be implemented here. The NAT processing will be done here. So coming down, if it is an SSL encrypted traffic, the decryption will happen, and it will happen at last. I'll be coming down to that. So before that, it will just figure out the application here. So here, when it looks for a security policy lookup, it has made the application as any, and then look for only few parameters here. This is the place where it will identify the application. So here, the firewall will first see whether the application override policy is matching the application that the traffic is intended for. So if it is matching the application override policy match is something that we configure here on the policy section. So this is a custom application that let's say we have an application that we have developed in our organization. So we should probably know what application will do and what port it works on. We'll be configuring that application here, and we'll be using it in the security policy. So the firewall will check if the application is a part of application override policy match. If it is a part of it, it will go ahead and check the security policy match again, if the application is allowed or denied. If it is not, it will be checking the pattern-based application identification, which I've again showed you initially when we looked at the application tab in the objects tab. So if you look at it here, so this is what firewall does when it wants to look for a pattern-based application identification. So it will look for the category, it will look for what subcategory it belongs to and technology and risk factor, and depending on that, it will identify the application here. So once the application is identified, then if it will go on to content inspection setup. If there is a security profile configured for the traffic, that will be attached here on the security policy at last. So here I have not attached any security profile. I have not configured any. So this is where you attach the security profile. So depending on what security profile is configured and what has been done within the security profile, the firewall will be inspecting it, and it will be dropping or warning the user of what he is going to do. So here is when it will check if it is an SSL traffic or not. So if it is an SSL traffic, it will be decrypted, and then again the application is identified here. And then comes down to content inspection. Content inspection again will see if there is a change in pattern of the application or change in application with regards to content inspection. What all we have configured here will be applied here, and it will be checked upon with the user traffic and see if there is any threat involved in it. If there is any antivirus profile that is hitting this traffic, and that specific rule we have configured in antivirus profile says deny this, it will be denied. If it says allow, it will be allowed, or if it says continue or alert, it will be alerting the user and allowing the user to go ahead with the access, or go ahead in accessing that application or that website. So after all that, since we have decrypted the SSL traffic here, we should be re-encrypting it. If it is not an SSL traffic, this step will be ignored. So if it is an SSL traffic that we are looking at, we are dealing with, here it will be decrypted and will be encrypted back again when it goes out of the content inspection section. And finally, the egress process is again same as all L3 device. Whatever the egress interface it has figured out here in the forwarding lookup, it will be forwarding it out to that interface. And again here, as we see, if it is an IPsec traffic, we said it will be decrypted and it will be processed. If the IPsec traffic is decrypted, it will be de-encrypted and then processed again out to the next device on the firewall, whatever the interface it has to go. So this is how it actually processes the packet from one interface to another, and these are all the things that happens within the firewall. And the breaching this firewall is pretty hard, and if it has been done, it will be letting us know through the log. We can take necessary action and send it out to the Palo Alto Cloud. As I said, Wildfire will help us in that. So we'll take a look at how we do a basic configuration on the firewall here. So to start with, I have already configured the inside and outside zones here. So what I'll do is I'll just remove what I have configured with respect to firewall, so that we'll not consume more time here. So I've created a rule which I have deleted it already. And with regards to objects, I have one object which defines the internal network. I'll delete that as well. And I have configured a routing for the firewall to point to ISP. that also can be deleted here. I think that's pretty much I have. Yeah, this is another thing that you're supposed to configure. Okay, this has a dependency on the interface. We'll delete the interfaces first. So now the interface looks empty as I have deleted all the configs on it. So now we can go ahead and delete the management profile. So I'll be covering on what all this means. So not to worry. Now the firewall will be without any config. I'll just commit to make sure it doesn't have anything with it. So we can go ahead and configure what all I have removed at the moment to make it work. So for lab purpose, I'm using EVNG here. We can use any platform like GNS3 or EVNG which I'm using. So in this case, I'm using two routers which references the internet and the LAN. And the agenda for today with respect to the initial configuration lab would be this outside router will be is configured with is enabled with SSH, and we are going to configure the firewall in such a way that this router inside will be accessing this router via SSH. So in a similar way, any application you might take into account, we can make this happen. I'm just taking SSH for example for simplicity. So we'll start configuring the firewall here. The commit is complete. Okay, first thing we would like to do is we need to have better readability on what the security policy will say. So if we add a security policy and go ahead and want to add a zone or want to add an IP address, we can just add an IP address like this, like we do in ASA firewall. But to have a better readability, when we deal with a large network, managing the naming conventions are very important. So we have to make sure we give a right name, relevant name for relevant VLAN or relevant subnet or whatever object you are trying to use here, so that you can reference that later and it will be very easy to identify which network you're working with. So I first try to explain the topology, how it stands. So it's a very simple topology that we can build here. So if you look at this, the inside network is of 192.168.10.0 with /24 subnet mask, and outside network is 100.1.1.0, so which is assumed to be internet, and we have loopback interface here, which is 8.8.8.8. And this Palo Alto is connected to management cloud, connects this management interface to the management cloud of EVNG, which literally means EVNG is running on my local PC, and the Palo Alto is connecting to the management interface of EVNG, which means the IP subnet of EVNG and my Palo Alto firewall's management interface IP will be in the same network, so that I can access this device GUI on my local browser. I don't have to have another PC here and configure the management IP address and the PC also in the same network and do all those complicated stuff. So I'm just trying to make this simple by accessing it on the normal browser that I have. So if you look at the config that I have on this device in the inside interface, it is simple. I have just configured an IP address that points to the Palo Alto firewall on the same network I mentioned. The Palo Alto will have .2 and this device is having .10. And I'm having a routing table which says, okay, I shouldn't be having this one. So this is a relevant IP route command. So the other end of the interface for this router is a Palo Alto firewall which has an IP of 192.168.10.2. So I'm pointing a default route to that IP address so that all the traffic will be routed to that interface. Going forward, regarding this router, it is again a simple interface config which will be pointing to the firewall 100.1.1.1, and there is a routing configured for the inside network, and it points to firewall IP address, outside IP address again. And we have enabled SSH on this firewall, and we have configured a SSH key as well. So let's go ahead and configure the firewall so that we can make the inside device to access the outside router via SSH. So first of all, we need to have an object which references the inside network. So I'll say, I'm just giving it a name. We go to objects tab, we go to addresses, and we are giving a name inside network, and we are pointing this to 192.168.10.0/24, the same network that the inside network should have. So this is done. So since we are going to write a policy which will look like everyone from inside network can access anything on the outside, and we are allowing SSH. So if we are very specific about which network they have to access, we have to create another object. So I'll be making the destination as any. So I'll just make sure inside network is sufficient. So now we configure the interface. So virtual router is something you can imagine similar to VRF in a actual Cisco router. So here as well, a default virtual router will already be created on the firewall. We can just use the default virtual router and keep all the other interfaces in the same virtual router so that routing will happen without any issues. As I said, all the interfaces should possess a zone. So this being an inside interface, I'm going to give the zone a name of inside. So this can be done either way, like you go to zones tab and then map the zone, create a zone and map it to an interface, or go to interface and map zone to this interface. Either way, it is going to work for you. So over here, this interface should hold an IP 1.10.2 here as per the diagram. And then we give OK. And we configure the outside interface. So it's very important to make sure the interface is layer 3 and not anything else, because you're going to deal with IP addresses. So all other interface types are for different purposes. Layer 3, layer 2, as you know, what are its functions? Virtual wire, high availability, and tap interfaces are all for its own purposes. So for routing a traffic for a normal data interface, it should be layer 3 in common. Again, the virtual router, we can keep it the same. And zone will be created again for this interface. Since it's going to be a different zone, we create a zone and give OK. So this zone points to this interface now. And again, the IP address, it will be 100.112. So the other end is 100.111, and this will point to 100.112. And we give OK. So first thing we will be doing after connecting a firewall in the network is trying to ping if the interface of the firewall is reachable. So with respect to Palo Alto, it will not be by default reachable. What we are supposed to do is we have to configure a management profile and say what protocols are allowed to reach this specific interface, right? So that we will be doing it under network again. Under network, you have interface management here. So we're going to create a profile which will say which protocol is allowed and to reach this interface. So in this case, I'm allowing SSH and ping. Here we are allowed to specify and customize different networks that are allowed to reach this interface of the firewall. So right now I'm leaving it blank, and which means all the addresses of networks are allowed to reach. So I'm just making sure SSH and ping are selected, and I'm giving OK. So where do we reference this management profile is on the interface again. So we go to the interface where we want to reference this, and you go to advanced, and here we'll see the management profile we created. We can also go ahead and create it here. The actual place where we're supposed to create it, what I showed you here. So we select management here and give OK. It is giving us a warning. By attaching this interface management profile to this interface, you are potentially exposing the firewall's administrative interface to any party that can reach this interface. So we can ignore this message. And for lab purpose, we can make this interface available for ping and SSH on outside zone as well. I'm selecting this for outside interface as well here. Again, the same message. So interface is now configured. And next, what we are supposed to do is to configure the routing. So we should need this firewall to reach internet device. So if you see the diagram here, so this device here corresponds to where we are actually imagining this interface to be an internet facing interface, the ISP device here. So usually firewall is the edge device in this case. So we are going to configure firewall in such a way whatever traffic comes to the firewall by default go to this fast Ethernet 0x0 interface of this router, which is ISP. So we can define any routing protocol you would like to. We can go for static routing in this case, giving it a name. Destination will be any. We can reference it to be 0.0.0.0/0. And which interface is the exit interface? It's 1/2. And IP address again 100.1.1.1. This is done. And now we're going to write a policy. So the policy will say the inside network, the object that we have created, will have to access anything on the outside network from the outside zone via application SSH. So I'm giving it a name. If you would like, you can give a description as well. So the inside the source interface will be inside, as the traffic is going to source from inside interface. And destination is inside network, the object that we have created. As I said, if we are having any user database synced with this Palo Alto device via any LDAP or captive portal or anything, we can mention the source user here. Right now, we don't have that scope, so we can just ignore that. So destination will be outside, and I'm choosing the destination address to be any. If we would like to, we can create an object and then make sure we add an IP address, say 8.8.8.8, that we have configured it as a loopback IP in the outside device there on the ISP device. So for now, I'm keeping it as any. So application, we can choose SSH here, since we have configured the ISP, the outside device, to listen to SSH. And under service, so if it says application default, it means the application that we have selected will use the default port. The security policy will be checked in such a way the application we have selected will use the default port here. So if application is SSH, it will be using its default port number 22 here, unless and until we specify anything different or server is listening anything different. The action, obviously, it is allowed here. So I'm going to commit. I can give any commit description. So once this is committed, we should be able to first try and reach the firewall's interface via ping, because we have, if you remember, we have attached a management profile to the firewall, which allows ping and SSH to the firewall. Then we'll be looking at the inside network should be able to access the outside network through SSH. So this is the device that we are interested in. So I'm first going to check if the firewall is reachable, since we have configured a management profile there. 10.2 is the firewall IP. So we are able to ping the firewall. This is because we have configured and attached a management profile here on the firewall, sorry, on the interface. So I am trying to ping the IP of inside Ethernet 1 by 1, so Ethernet 1 by 1. So it is having an IP of 10.2, and it has been attached with the management profile, which allows ping and SSH to the firewall, to that interface. So that's the reason we were able to ping that IP address from this device. So now I'll try to telnet onto port number 22, and let me first check if this interface is active. Yes, it is. Okay, yeah, it works. So we got to know whether this hits this actual security policy we have configured. So we can check this in various ways. So first we can go ahead and since we have only one security rule here, this would be the best option to check. But in a corporate environment, we'll have so many rules configured in this policies section. So this won't be a feasible way, but still, this is again another way that we can check if this is being hit here. This traffic is hitting the same rule. So if you see, the hit count was 0 before. That's the first time we configured and committed that rule. The last hit was at this time. I'm not sure what the time zone it is running. Okay. So application that we use is SSH. And in latest Palo Alto firewall, we'll have another section here. Let's say we have allowed 4 to 5 applications in the same rule. The firewall will say which application it's been contacted or was accessed in this rule, and what are the applications that has not been used at all, so that we can remove those applications from the rule to make sure unwanted applications are not allowed for this traffic. So I think I'm running Palo Alto 8.1. So probably from Palo Alto 10.0, this feature has been introduced. So this is a quick initial configuration that I have planned to show you this evening. So coming down, the last thing that we'll be discussing is Panorama. Panorama is actually designed to simplify the administrator task. Let's say we have almost close to 20-25 sites with 2 to 3 data centers involved, and each of the sites are terminating to internet via Palo Alto firewall, and logging into each of the firewall would be a tedious task, and management would be very difficult. Managing the firewalls as a standalone firewall would be very difficult task to perform as an administrator. So what Palo Alto has come across is that it has introduced something called Panorama, which actually will be having a similar graphical user interface like you see here in this screen. So it will have a dashboard, ACC, monitor, policies tab, objects, network device, and it will have another tab saying Panorama there. So Panorama itself is a device where we can go ahead and sync our corporate firewalls and manage them in a centralized place in a single device, inside a single device. So consider you have to check a traffic. You go to Panorama, you can type filter out the source IP and destination IP. It will tell you which firewall the traffic hits and which firewall you are supposed to be interested in with regards to the traffic. So if let's say Panorama is not there, you will not be able to figure out which firewall is the actual traffic hitting, and unless and until you know or you are the person who designed the network. So that's one of the features that you can think of when it comes to Panorama. And also you configure a policy here which is common to all 25 offices. You group, let's say you have 25 firewalls that are synced to this Panorama. You will be able to group them into group them based on regions, group them based on whether it's branch firewalls or data center firewalls. So if the policies are specific to data center firewalls, you can just select a group and then make sure all the policies that you create is pushed to those firewalls at once. Or else, in absence of Panorama, it will look like you have to log into each firewall and then configure each rule that you are supposed to configure and push them separately, which will again involve too much administrative task. Centralized visibility, as I said, you go to monitor tab, and if you want to check any traffic related to your corporate environment, you just have to know what is the source and destination IP, and firewall Panorama will be able to grab all the information on whether the traffic belongs to firewall A or firewall B or whatever. You don't have to go and see or go and figure out. You don't have to know where the traffic is actually hitting. You just can come to Panorama and get its help, and you will be able to know which firewall it actually hits, the traffic hits. And as I said, device group and template. So this is going to be a separate topic that we will be dealing with. So I'll just let you know how it works and what are its scope in terms of firewall management. So if you think of device group specifies the configuration that you do with respect to policies on objects. So as soon as you configure a firewall to be a part of Panorama, you will see something written as device group here. So as soon as you add a firewall to Panorama, you will be able to see a tab that pops out, something like device group, which covers policies and objects, and something called templates, which covers network and device. So whatever configuration you do with respect to policies and objects, you got to select the device group, and firewall should be a part of a specific device group, and you should select the device group and perform the configuration task, creating a policy or anything related to things under policy. Sorry, I mean anything related to things under policy or objects. And with regards to templates, it covers all the configuration that relates to network and device. So whatever configuration you do with respect to network and device, it should be done under a specific template. So with this, you will be able to reduce the administrative task to the minimum, so that you can concentrate on how to better use the firewall for its features, rather than sitting and configuring them on each device, whereas it can be done at a single shot for all the devices you want to. So more about device group and template and about Panorama will surely be discussed if we get to meet again. I just wanted to show you on how this device group and templates work, and how Panorama is useful in managing the firewall. So I hope I've been clear till now. You can let me know if you have any questions. Vijay, I'm done from my side. If people have any questions, they can let me know.
Sure. Thanks, Raghavat. Thanks for your wonderful session.
Thank you, Vijay.
Thank you.